Namaskar. My guest today is Mr. B.V. Doshi, who's been a pioneer of Indian modern architecture, and he's also been an educationist and an institution builder. We decided to meet him at his office, Sangat, so that we could get a feel of both his work and life around his work. So Doshi, I'd like to begin by asking you the obvious question: why did you choose architecture as your profession?
You will be surprised. My whole life is full of accidents. I was born in a family who were dealing in furniture.
Okay.
And none of our people had gone even up to the college level.
Okay.
But it was my drawing. I had joined a class. And that is that teacher there when I joined the Ferguson College in science. He says, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "I don't know." Then he said, "But then you will eventually end up by getting into furniture workshop. So why don't you go to architecture school in Bombay? There is a JJS college." And he says it has future prospects. So why don't you try? So that is how I went into architecture.
So he must have seen that you're very creative with your work, and you could identify space and things like that.
I don't think so. I was not a very good artist either, but I was reasonably good. And once one of my watercolors was in the Bombay Art Society that time.
Okay.
So it was fairly good, and I would have perhaps become an artist.
But then you chose to do this, and you never sort of had doubts about it after that?
No, I don't think that if I look back, I think all my life it has been a flow of a certain kind. So I went into architecture, then I was not well.
Oh, okay.
So in order to help me, there was a senior student who was staying in the hotel. It was a guest house.
Okay.
And he saw me and he says, "Look, I'll help you." So we became friends. Then he was going to London to get a job and to finish his RIBA, our normal diploma at that time that was available. And he says, "Look, I'm going there, so if I get a job there, then I'll call you."
Achha.
So he sent me a letter and I left the school halfway. JJ College, I did not complete the 4th year.
Okay.
And I went to London.
Okay.
And there, I spent for almost 6-8 months. And there was a conference. And I heard about it, that there is a conference which I did not know about at all. See, my education was not really that profound or in detail. So when I went to that conference, I met by chance a Colombian, and that was the time Corbusier was doing Chandigarh. So it was a Siam Congress. It was a congress of the professional architects. And he was presenting the project of Chandigarh. That was in 51.
Okay.
So I was there and I met a Colombian, and he says, "You are an Indian?" I said, "Yes." He says, "What is the name of this city? What does it mean?" I said, "Chandigarh implies perhaps it's a goddess's name." So I said, "Show me what you are doing." I mean, it was impossible for me to read those plans. But then I
so
said,
detailed, is it
yeah,
because
not
of that?
only that, it was a conceptual plans presented.
Okay.
And then he said, "Here is the Corbusier." He showed me from far away. Then eventually I asked him, the next day I met him again. So I asked him, "Can I join his office?"
Okay.
He says, "I don't know, you apply in your handwriting." So I went back to the guest house, and I had to do the letter in English 4 or 5 times because my education was not in English.
Okay.
So I wrote a letter and I got a reply from him that if you want to join, you come here, but we will not pay you for 8 months.
Okay.
So I said, "Doesn't matter." So I took my bag, and within a week I was in Paris.
Oh, wonderful.
Not knowing French, not knowing about Corbusier's work, I landed there, but it was more than 3 years that I worked with him.
Right.
And that period was the best
Very
period of his
adventurous.
career. Chandigarh was going on, and I was given the drawings to do of the High Court.
Okay.
And then there were 4 jobs of Ahmedabad. the mill owner's office building, the museum, and the two houses, the Sarabhai house and the Shodhan house. So I was given the chance to work on them, and that is how I became acquainted. And then he asked me to go to Chandigarh because I said, now it's time, I must go back home, and I was not well. So he said, no, you go as a special architect to do the assembly project, Parliament building.
Okay.
So I came to Chandigarh as a special officer, and in 3 weeks' time I said, this is probably not the right place. So that is how
Why is that?
You know, in a government job there are all kinds of situations. You know, I don't think temperamentally I am suited to work under or with somebody and follow the routine. You know, you get stages. You know, you go from one position to the other, and you are in the world there. Perhaps, I don't know. And they all thought that I did not have a diploma, but they have forgotten that I had. So I thought this is not a place. So I told him that I will come to Ahmedabad. I was decided not to go anywhere. Suddenly I realized that the person who was supervising Ahmedabad projects had to go back to Paris for his military service, Jean-Louis Verret.
Okay.
So I asked Corbusier, maybe I'll go back to Ahmedabad. I'll not go back, but I'll go to Ahmedabad. That is how I landed in Ahmedabad.
Oh,
that was in 54.
Just rewinding a bit, your schooling was where?
In Pune.
Okay.
I was a Gujarati speaking in Maharashtrian. I was almost a semi-Maharashtrian.
Okay, okay. So, all right. So, and your experience of 3 years working with Corbusier, what was it that you felt was the biggest learning from that in terms of work?
First is that I learned that if you know less, and if you don't know the language also, then your sensitivities open up. Your eyes, your proportions, your sense of value, and if you are drawing with hand. And Corbusier was mostly sitting with me on the table, teaching me all this. So that was the best learning I had, because his teaching was connected to the movement of people, the life of people, and how they really work. So it was really very much socio-anthropological way of working in architecture. So you don't create space without knowing what the space is for and how behavior happens. That was the best part I learned. Second part I learned from him was how to work with forms and structure. Third was light.
Can you explain a little bit about working with form and structure?
You see, the architecture basically is measured by the way we move inside a building or the way we see and get attracted by a building. Then the whole question is, once you go in, then there must be elements of surprises.
Yeah.
And the space must unfold. So it is really a guidance for a person to go. So it actually, space compels you to move in a certain way.
Right.
And that is what I learned from him. Second was the juxtaposition of volumes. How do you really articulate volumes? How do you really look at from one side? Actually, it is very much like a human being or animal, living being. It is like saying each element has its specificity and yet they are interlinked with the rest.
Yeah.
And then there is that movement, there is that liveliness, and that is what I learned.
And when you came back to Ahmedabad, how did you translate that in your work here? If you could specifically
I didn't come back, I just came as an outsider.
Yes,
and
of course,
then,
yes.
And
You're from
then
Pune, yes.
I began to work on Corbusier's buildings after about a year and a half. I had no work. I had got married to a Gujarati here. But yet I had to find a way to go. So I had decided to leave and perhaps go to Delhi, where I knew Mr. Kanvinde.
Okay.
But Kasturbai Lalbhai, who was the main person here, the industrialist, whose influence was in, he was the key person to invite Corbusier and Kahn. So he asked me, why don't you stay on here and what is the expense? Do you know, that time I said I only need 500 rupees a month and then I can stay on. He says, I will provide you that money. So that made me continue stay here.
Okay.
So I began my work with low cost housing. He said, this is the building which is costing so much, 5,000 rupees or so. Can you make me a similar building which I need to add to my this Attira Institute? I said, yes, I'll try that. It was the first time I started working on low cost housing. I had worked in Paris with Corbusier on Chandigarh's low cost Pune's houses. So I tried to work here, and Vikram Sarabhai was then the director of Attira. So I did those buildings. That is how I began my career. Then Kasturba started giving me other projects. Then he gave me Indology Institute.
Yes.
Then the Sarabhais gave me the Shreyas School. And that is how the career slowly began to pick up.
So when you started these projects, there must have been something very endemic to India or Ahmedabad.
Yes.
So what was it that you needed to sort of disconnect with from your experience in Paris and sort of focus on in India, in Ahmedabad?
Actually, I must mention, which I forgot. In Corbusier's office, there was a climatic chart, because for him, India was an experiment.
Yes.
So he talked about light, ventilation, temperatures, humidity, cloud presence.
Yes.
So all those things were in my mind. So first lesson that I learned here was, how do you really work with climate? And incidentally, Ahmedabad clients were very, very pragmatic and very sharp. So they wanted to say, if there is no fan, how will you ventilate the building? How will you insulate a building? How would you make it work, in the minimum space? Now those were the learning process. So actually I learned from Corbusier and then from the clients here.
Okay. And learning from the clients, sometimes what happens is, in today's time, a lot of architects, they say, oh, my client is very difficult and I have too many do's and don'ts from the client and I'm not able to express myself and be as creative as possible. So what is the kind of balance that you try to strike?
Actually, a client is a very essential element in the creativity. It depends upon the intent of the client. Here the clients were very pragmatic and they had no inhibition of any style or pattern. Okay. So they never told me that you do this way or that way. They said, you will give us ventilation, you will give us efficient spaces, and you will give us a building that we need in a certain way. For example, Indology, when I did the building, it was for manuscripts. So in order to keep the manuscript, they say, but we don't want to put any mechanical device. That is how I had to do the basement.
Okay.
And that is how I was doing the work. And then he said, no, your orientation must be north-south, so that the sun doesn't work very much, it is because if you have east-west, then you get morning and evening sun.
Yes.
So this north-south linear buildings became from him as a guiding force. So it was the client's attitude to saving energy, which has stood even now in my mind, that I think in life one must learn about energy, saving cost, making things efficient, so that they can be used also for multi-purpose uses. I think these are not my trainings. This came from the client demand. For example, Vikram Sarabhai was saying, if the temperature is so high, how will you keep the roof cool? So then finally he showed, he says, why don't you put only 2 inches of water on the top, and the temperature will always remain the same. And then there is a float valve, so the water will remain only that much. So clients were always asking. Similarly, Dr. Kamla Chaudhary, who was also there with Vikram Bhai, she raised the questions of social behavior. That how people live in a room, how do they live in a society, what kind of attitude they have with neighbors, what is the meaning of a street, lifestyles. So I learned that aspect again from the client. So enlightened client who is not asking about aesthetics or imagery, they are the ones who become really your teachers.
Uh, if you were to trace your change in design, or is I had asked you earlier, what is your signature style? You said that it's been evolving over the years. But if you were to talk about how it was in the beginning, then in the
I
middle,
tell
and
you,
now.
there are a couple of constants that I always work. I try to relate with the sky and the ground. So if you look at the School of Architecture, Indology, this building or other buildings, you will find connection with the ground and the sky.
Right. And now coming to this particular project, this is the Gufa project.
Gufa was a by chance. Hussein I knew before, several decades before. So one day we were sitting in he's our common friend's place, and it was very hot, and he says, "ये क्या हो रहा है सब? इतनी गर्मी में कैसे मकान बनाओगे?" मैंने कहा, "पता नहीं है, नीचे हो जा सकता है. Underground we can do a building." Then years passed. Then I met him again, and one day he comes and says, "मुझे एक गैलरी बनानी है." So actually, Gufa was not what he wanted. He wanted to have, like in Bangalore and other places, a house or something where he can have his paintings, he can paint and he can sell.
Okay.
So he says, "मुझे जगह चाहिए." So I showed him because I was connected to the university and next to the SEPT campus. So I showed him, "This is the place. ये अच्छा है आपके लिए?" He says, "ठीक है." Then he says, "क्या करेंगे?" तो I said, "You remember the old stories." मैंने कहा, "तुम देखो, पहले मिले थे तब बात कर रहे थे मुझे कि कैसे मकान बनाना है, तो अभी तो तुम भी करते हो, मैं भी थोड़ा काम करता हूँ, तो चैलेंज लेते हैं दोनों के लिए। आप वहाँ पेंटिंग नहीं करोगे और मैं आर्किटेक्चर नहीं करूँगा, कुछ नया करेंगे, क्योंकि वो नहीं होगा तो नहीं चाहिए. सो दिस इज द चैलेंज टू बोथ. सो आई सेड आई विल गो बिलो ग्राउंड, बट आई डोंट नो व्हाट. सो ही सेज, ठीक है तो करो. दैट इज हाउ इट केम एज अ गुफा. देन आई वर्कड फॉर a year and a half.
But why do you say that this is not architecture?
Because in the normal architecture, la parlance, it is of no use. Then it has not a measurable structure, nor it no, incidentally, while it was being built, when it was going below ground, people thought, the students in the college, it is in the campus.
Yeah.
So they thought that they are building a swimming pool there. I used to go for a morning walk. So
Okay.
I found them. When it began to come up like this, when it came like this structure, without anything else, this is above ground, so they say, this is like a bunker. Why are they building this, in Gandhiji's land? Is it for war, I was amazed. When it was built, I took many people there, artists. Kanure Center was already built. I knew them well, so I said, come and see this. They would come and see, not yet finished, almost finished. They, no, let it be finished, then we will tell you how it is. You take an architect, they say, why should this be like this? I said, no, I want to make a building which is very different. So once it was built, then Hussein came with Chester Hurwitz, his collector, with a canvas roll. And I had told him, कि आप उसमें नहीं लगा सकते हो. But he brings a canvas, he tries to put it on the wall. It falls off. Then he tries to get Velcro, and then again he tried. Nothing happened. He was really tired and almost upset. I said, मैंने आपको बताया था, you have to do something here which you have never done before. Movie कर सकते हो, दूसरा करो, projection हो सकता है, because even the floor also moves. So then while we were doing this under construction, my friend engineer told me that if you use brick, you are restricted. But if you use ferro cement, then you are free to do what you like, because they are like soap bubbles. So when they come together, they can create another form. So the original model was with vertical supports. But when we started doing this, we had a problem. So I got hold of the engineer and this Mr. Doshi, and then he worked on the computer, and then those columns and this thrust, like these junctions here, they create a very different kind of a pause. Before that, when I was doing the model, it was straight. So I took it on the table here and shook the whole model. So that is how these forms change their axis. It is like a fruit basket.
Okay.
Because they changed the axis, the support system changed. I had already gone up. So we had to combine this with support there or support here. Then we did this in ferro cement and created this. So it has been for me the most difficult challenge, and for Hussein also. For many years he did not paint there, he did one line. Then one day he brought cutouts. Years later, just 10 years before he left, he said, क्या करना है अभी? मैंने कहा तुम देखो, agenda इरोरा करो. So he took the model, big model we sent him, and he painted that model. Then we painted this in the ceiling. It is the largest Hussein painting in the world.
I see, okay.
And so then now everybody come there to see, but they don't know what is the purpose. So coming back to your first question, I believe what gives you joy, what gives you smile, cannot be measured in price or use. Life has to be enjoyed and rejoiced. So it is not necessary that architecture must have a specific function.
We are now in another part of Mr. Doshi's office, where we wanted him to explain to us some of the work that he's been doing over the years, and we thought the best way of doing this is checking out the models with him explaining. So this is the model of the IIM Bangalore campus, which is spread over 120 acres. And Mr. Doshi, how is it that you planned this?
Subramaniam was given me this job. He asked me this question that for small scale industry, what kind of character should we have? Second, having realized at the IIM that the institutions of such kind take 10 years, 15 years, 12 years, I knew that uncertainty of funds, changing of concepts, and also the requirement of the institute changes over time. So first principle that I found was, I will make it a growing complex like Fatehpur Sikri. So you get courtyards, and then compared to Ahmedabad, which is hot, dry climate, bright sun, Bangalore is a garden city.
Yes.
So I decided that I will make the corridors into gardens. So these are really the corridors where you find trees around with a pergola. So the passage is the only portion which is covered. So when you walk there, two things happen. I also was at a stage in my life when I was thinking about time. And I was also thinking about what is constant and what is flexible, permanent, temporary. So when I did these things, that continuously kept in mind that sunlight, which is not very harsh, but very beautiful, if that casts the shadows, then those shadows must be so seen that you don't feel that you are in the same place, same time, even the next day. So those things we achieved. The other thing was the interaction between the faculty and the student. Compared to the IIM, this one has faculty here and the classrooms are here.
Compared to the IIM
Ahmedabad.
you mean?
So classrooms and faculty are close by, so that they can interact all the time.
Yes.
The IIM Ahmedabad was across the courtyard.
Okay.
So that was the other change.
Okay.
The third change was that this became like one well-knit fabric, and initially it was built like this with administration and other buildings and classrooms here. Eventually they go on adding, and slowly finally they added here other classrooms. So each time the program slightly modified. Like this library was originally this auditorium, which is on this side here, was located here. It was replaced there. The library was only this much area. Now it has been added this, and now even a new building is added.
We are now in front of the model of Sangad, which is also the office where we are standing. This has, in 1984, this was one amongst the 100 buildings by 100 architects over 100 years. So we thought we should actually ask Mr. Doshi to do a run-through of the model and explain the concept behind it. Why have you called it Sangaat?
Sangaat implies moving together. Like for example, the office is not known by my name, it is known as a Vastu Shilp.
Yes.
And Vastu Shilp implies Vastu is environment and Shilp is design. So this is really what architecture should be. Environmental design is really the difference between what we call architecture, form making, to environmental design. So it must work with the environment, that is climate, social conditions, lifestyle and place.
Okay.
Yeah, that is how this was done. So when it was done, the whole idea was,
Built when?
this was built in 1981.
Okay.
We moved there. The issue here was, should an office be like an office? And what is the nature of an office? And what is the nature of a place where you work? So like I did in the school, or even at IIM was done later, but the School of Architecture, which was in '62, I was wondering whether the building should be really private or public, whether it can be used for other activities. So I thought it would be good to have really activities which are beyond, in order to make one feel holistic. So you have celebrations, you can have gatherings, you can have discourses, you can have people coming there, you should have also craft. I think all this really makes the world of an architect in the true sense, in the classical sense. So in this case, you come from there and the building was long because it is north-south. And I needed the light from the north and I needed a long wall to hang the photographs like this. So in order to get those two walls, then you naturally make a long building. You see, the best thing to do is to create exciting architecture by giving magical ways to move, meandering routes. So you come here and you see a building, but there is no entrance. Then you arrive here, you don't know where to go, there or there, so you're already puzzled. Then you look at the landscape, you look at trees. That's the only way you make them see things. And when they come here, they can't believe that this could be the building, because it is full of garden. A lot of people come here as a municipal garden. But here you come and then there is no building here. So you look at the building and it doesn't look like there is any office because it has all the plinths and the light is not there. So there are no windows and the appearance is very different. The other reason was, how do you make this building energy-wise very efficient? That is why this building is known. That we use half the energy, we get natural light, we get ventilation, and we have these double walls which insulate the building. And on top there is a China mosaic, so it reflects the heat.
Yeah.
So this is the key. The second is the pavement. These are all waste products. This building is full of waste products.
Is it? Okay.
Yes. Patent stone, minimum material, then on the site what is waste? No, these are all patterns there.
Okay.
And then the pond comes here, so you see monkeys sometimes, bird.
Monkey.
Yeah, and then you look around like this. You don't know how can this be an office. It must be a house.
Yeah.
Or maybe Mr. Doshi is staying here. And this is where our daughters and granddaughters got married.
Okay.
So the water comes from there, falls here, goes there, goes into this, comes here, then goes out. And this is the garden. And now you don't go, say, come back here and you are walking, you don't know where to go because this wall also doesn't look like any architectural piece. It looks like a ruin.
Yes.
So these are all fragments. So this is a building not made one piece, it's made of many things. For example, if you look from here, you see, it's only, you see nice things, but you don't know what it is.
Yes.
And that is the whole idea.
Puzzle.
And then of course, once you come into this place, it is so narrow,
Yeah.
you don't expect this is an entry. And then you come here and you go down and there is a door, but there is no window, there is no sign, and here there is no entry. So that's how it is. and it is a little dark. So, okay,
So
okay,
the
Priyaji.
puzzle.
Chalo, see you tomorrow.